Hello, Ben coming to you from New York City with a mini album tutorial. I am doing page 3 of my mini album tutorial. So, I kind of have made this list, and I'm trying to find it as I'm saying this, of like all of the features that I want to make sure to hit as I go through this tutorial. The different kinds of pages that I like to do, just kind of making sure that I give you a really good variety. And so today we're going to talk about waterfalls. So this is a waterfall page, and basically I've made my schematic right here. I'm going to leave a 1-inch border around the page and do a 4x6 landscape waterfall. So there's going to be 5 tabs for this. So basically, I want it to be, for my pieces of cardstock, I'm going to have one big piece of cardstock that forms the top 4x6 flap, plus the entire base as well. So that's why it's going to be 6 inches wide by, and I'm showing you how I did the math here, 4 inches for the top flap, and then 6 inches for the back. Because at the end of this, the entire waterfall piece will be 6 by 6, okay? And then there will be 1 inch on either side, top and bottom, okay? So the piece of cardstock I need is 6 by 10, and then I'm going to score it at 4 inches so I can fold it over to make the flap. And then I'm going to need 4 flaps that I cut at 4.5 by 6. And that extra ½ inch on top is going to be the little tab that glues each piece down. And I'm going to need 4 of those. So I've got these cut out. Here are my flaps, 4.5 by 6. And then each one of these, I already scored them. I'm trying to do as much ahead of time as possible so I can make these videos a little faster. I scored each one at a ½ inch on this short side, and that makes the tab. So this tab will fold down and allow this to flip. Okay, so score at 1/2 inch along this edge. So you will make 4 of those. And then you're going to take one piece of 6 by 10 and you're going to score this at 4 inches right here. So again, this, actually I'm just going to go this way. This will be the base. I've got my 6 by 6 inch base here. This is 4 by 6 and is my first flap. And we're going to glue all the other flaps back here. Okay. So those are my cardstock pieces. I've already got my page base. And remember, as we're gluing this on, the open edges should be to the side, okay? So you want a closed edge at the top. Now, it doesn't matter which way you do it, as long as the sides are open. Now, if you've gone ahead and done your pocket on the back, you'll want to make sure that you have this oriented right. You don't want to end up with an upside down waterfall. If you did though, which I have done this before, what I would do is just cut this page apart, the whole thing, cut it apart at the top and the bottom, and then just glue the whole thing down on another page. It makes kind of a thick page, but it at least will salvage your work. Okay, so I've talked about the cardstock that we need. We also want to cut out our decorative paper. And I kind of get this from Kona Raven. She talks about cut this out of card, cut this out of deco. It's just a really easy way to talk about cardstock versus decorative paper. So for the deco, I'm going to need my actual flap mat, decorative paper. That's going to be 3 7/8 by 5 7/8. So remember, the flaps are 4 by 6. I like the really small 1/16 inch border, thus I just take an 1/8 off of each. And we'll need 11 of those. And then we'll need one big piece of 7 7/8 by 7 7/8 to be the background. Now, if you really wanted to conserve paper, you could cut out the middle of that 7 7/8 by 7 7/8 piece, because it's not going to show. We're going to be gluing down this 6 by 6 piece in the middle. So you could cut a square out of the middle of that bottom if you really wanted to save paper. I'm not quite that intense about saving paper, especially in this album. What I'm using this this paper stack because there's so much paper. Okay. And then I also kind of wrote down here what else I'll need. 2 brads and some twine or string, because that's how we're going to close the waterfall at the end. So, first things first. I'm going to, I cut out my deco paper already. And basically, I used the next few sheets, but I also went back and grabbed a couple of the sheets that we skipped at the beginning because they were plain. So they're kind of perfect for this, you know, for the waterfall, because you don't need them to be too busy, because they're probably all going to have photos on them. So these were 2 different pattern papers that I had skipped earlier. And then I went ahead and just took the next, I made these out of the leftovers from the pocket page in my last video. And then these were the next 2. Now, it does mean I have a lot of scraps from those last 3 pages I cut. But I also wanted to mix it up. I didn't want to use the same, you know, we've got 11 of these, so I didn't want to just use 2 or 3 pieces and have 4 of the same design on the same waterfall. So, but these scraps that are, I call, you know, they're not really scraps because they're so big. I'm going to be able to use these, you know, on anything else that I have left. So the first thing we're going to do, now that I've cut out everything, the first thing I have to do is glue down the backing piece. So we're going to do that. I'm going to use my ATG. Oops. Okay. Oh, you know what? And I forgot to ink these edges. So I think most people ink their edges, but just so you know, you can tell why is, do you see on this, the edge, you can kind of see that raw white edge sticking out because the paper this is printed on is white. So you see when you cut it, especially on the cut edge, you see that white sticking out. So even if you just barely ink the edge, do you see how much more finished this looks over here? Sorry. Than this does over here? You just don't see that white popping out. So that's why I ink the edges. Now I use this little Ranger tool on the foam, and I kind of come up a little bit because I don't want to just make the edges look clean. I want to actually come up a bit on the edge and give it a little bit of distress. If you don't, you can just kind of cleanly go around this like that, and that just inks the edge. And by just inking the edge, you get rid of that raw white edge, and it almost looks like you didn't cut the paper, like the paper was meant to be exactly this size, right? Because you lose that sort of raw, clean looking edge. So you can see here, I come up just a little bit on the edge. Oops, there's a hair. One of my cat's hairs, it got caught in that. And, oops. Gonna stick that down. Well, that's not good. Ugh, I hate that. That is one good thing about ATG, is I can just kind of pull it back up. I guess it's not that great because it means that it doesn't stick that hard. That's not very good either, but that's good enough. Good enough. Okay. So now the next thing we're going to do is glue this down. I kind of made this with 1 inch on all 4 sides. I'm not so particular that I'm going to like measure it. I'm just going to eyeball this. You know, I know that that's going to bother some people, but it does not bother me. So we're just going to glue this down. I'm going to use some wet glue on this one. And definitely I use my stronger adhesive when I'm putting pieces down, and I will in this whole waterfall, because force is going to be applied against all these waterfall pieces from opening and shutting them. So you want to make sure you use a really strong adhesive so that it sticks really well. Because, oops, and I want to make sure that this paper definitely has an up side because it has all this text. So this is going to be my up. And now, I'm going to glue this down. And again, the wet adhesive is cool because you get a little opportunity to center it after you've already put it down. And again, you know, it's not perfect, but, you know, it's close enough. I'm going to use my bone folder to make sure I get this edge really stuck down. And I can use it to really get this page stuck down. Okay. So now I've got the base of my waterfall plus my first waterfall flap. Now, basically, the rest of the flaps will be glued down like this. Okay? So, what I want to do here is measure out 1/2 inch and make sure that I place the first one exactly 1/2 inch down from this seam, okay? Because the rest of them will be easy because of those 1/2 inch tabs, keeps it evenly spaced. But I'm gonna do this. I'm just gonna basically take this ruler, make one mark on either side exactly at 1/2 inch, and then when I turn it the other way, I can use the fact that this is kind of a centering ruler and make sure I get a really perfectly parallel straight line, so I can line up this guideline here perfectly with that side, this with this. So I know now that this line that I'm drawing is perfectly parallel to my folded edge and perpendicular to the sides. So I'm just gonna do this lightly. Okay. So that's now how I know where I need to place this tab, okay? So this is one of my tab pages. I have scored and folded this little tab down, and I've done my little thing where I cut a little bit off of the edges on the flap. So for this, you know, first, what I am gonna do is go ahead and notch the corners of these bad boys. And I'm going to do it on this too. I probably should have done this before I glued it down. Okay. And now I'm just going to glue this on. Okay. And you notice me using two different kinds of adhesive here. I tend to use this where I need to put a little bit in a small area. And then I tend to use the Alien's Quick Dry tacky glue if I need to put a lot down. I don't know if that's really right. It's just what I kind of fell into doing. So on this one, if anything, you want to put it just a little bit above the line. You also, as you glue this down, want to make sure that you're exactly even on the sides, because you don't want the flap sticking out on the sides, okay? So that's my first edge. So now I've got these two little pieces of the waterfall. I'm going to pause this, and I'm going to go ahead and glue down the other 3 flaps just below it, and I will be back with you in just a minute. Okay, I am back now. I have glued down all of my flaps, so I basically have a pretty functional waterfall at this point. One note that I do want to make, when you're gluing down this last one, you want to make sure you're not going to line it up to this edge. You're going to line it to the bottom, because you don't want the bottom sticking out or this sticking out over the bottom. You want to make sure that this lines up with the side so that you're left with a very neat looking waterfall that has very straight edges on both sides and also at the bottom, okay? So before we start putting down all of our pattern papers here, I want to basically clue you into how we're going to do the closure. So basically, I've got these two adorable little button brads. And they came, you know, from the kind of cheapy section at Michael's. It's Recollections brand. The little tag fell out. But these were maybe $2 or $3. And they've got little teeny ones and kind of normal sized ones. And I'm using the normal sized ones. So basically, I'm going to put a brad here. And I'm going to put a brad here. And I'm going to attach some of this twine to the bottom one and just kind of wrap it around, and that's going to hold the waterfall closed. So this bottom one's going to be a little challenging. We'll get to that later because you're going to have to go behind the pocket page. Sorry, I thought my cat was about to jump out the window. I didn't see that the screen was closed. That was a little scary. Okay, but this top one, what we want to make sure that we do is we're going to glue this paper down, then put this brad in here, close it here, and then put our paper on this next one to make sure we hide that brad coming through. So, like I said, first what I'm going to do is adhere this paper. I'm left-handed, and sometimes I think that's the reason my little ATG gets clogged. Let's see. Okay. And this is the top way. And I've inked the edges of all these too already. I didn't do that on camera. Okay. So, and I definitely wanted like a relatively high impact paper for the outside. So I've got that there. Now I'm going to do my highly non-fancy brad placement method of eyeballing and poking. I think that looks good, so I'm just going to pop that there. I'm going to poke this hole through. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to pop the brad through. And then I'm going to use this to just really make sure it's opened up good. Okay, so that's good. And now I'm going to take my second piece and just glue it down over that brad closure. And I'm going to use ATG for this. Okay. You know what? I am going to put just a smidge of wet glue down around the brad itself because I want to keep that in place. So now I put this here. Okay, and now, there we go. So also, as I before I put all the rest of the paper on this waterfall, I tend to put the plainer pieces on the bottom pages because you're more likely to put photos down here and leave the top blank if you're not going to cover every page. So I put the plainer photos down here and I put the busier papers up top. I think that works better. Maybe you disagree. But that's how I'm going to do it. So the other thing is you're going to want to cover this edge, because let me just go ahead and put the next piece in to show you what I'm talking about. Let me just TG this real quick. I'm going to ink my edges really fast. Another tip with the edges, you want to make sure you ink your edges after you do the ticket corner punch, because if you don't, you're going to be left with, you know, white edges on those punched edges. So now I'm going to pop this right here. Okay, and so now you see we're left with this kind of strip, which is the space in between. There's a few different things you could do. You could just ink these up if you want, just make them a little darker. That's really easy. You can cut, you know, very thin strips of paper to just go in there. That's also very easy. And then, well, I mean, they're all easy. And then you could use some sort of trim. This trim I got at Michael's, and most of it's pink, but this just kind of has this gray chevron. And it's also kind of the perfect width for this. So I thought that that might look cute. Also, I have just some plain kind of satin ribbon here, which again, it's not fancy looking, but it's enough to kind of just cover up these seams here. And I've got this too. I've got some other stuff, but you know, this is just too thick. I like the look of this kind of rope, the rope look of this, but I feel like if I put that down and then close this over, it's going to be too bulky. So I can't use that on this. I've also got some great sort of jute ribbon, but it's too wide, you know, so that's not going to work either. So just something to think about. You're going to want to put something there for sure, but like you can be ribbon, it can be paper, it could just be ink. You're just going to want to cover up the fact that those are sticking through. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of that, and I'll be back with you in just a second. Okay, welcome back. I have put all my papers down, and I have marked my edges. I basically just went pretty easy and just used this Michael's Celebrate It ribbon. It's just the 3/8 of an inch and just this sort of brown, you know, it almost has that a grosgrain kind of texture to it. And so I just did one line of that on each page. You know, it ends up being pretty flat that way, which is good because it stays down. And then you won't need any on this last page, the way that works out. So now we're just going to finish up with the closure. This is where it gets a little tricky because we're going to have to put this brad in and, you know, to the underside of the inside the pocket page. So, and then we're also going to have to feed in this, I'm using this Recollections brand jute for the closure. So I've cut a piece of this. This is about 20 inches. Gives us enough to wrap it around a few times. So first of all, I want to do my thing, you know, where I kind of figure out where do I want to place this. I want it to be pretty much straight down from this, and I want to kind of center it in between, in the middle of this sort of inch that's left down here. So I'm gonna do it, see, I'm just gonna put it right there. So I'm just gonna basically poke that, and that just marks. I didn't really poke all the way through. That just, again, marks where I want it. So now what I do is I'm gonna kind of pick this up, and I'm gonna be really careful not to like poke a hole in my finger, but you also want to be careful that you're not poking a hole in the page behind, right? So I kind of poked this way because I didn't want to poke through to the back. I just wanted to poke through the top page here. So two things have to happen here. Number one, I need to put this string through and the brad. It's hard because this hole is just not quite big enough. So let me just see if I can kind of open that up a little bit with my tool here. And now let me see if I can just poke the string through the hole. See, this is where it gets difficult. I'm just gonna, there we go. Just feed it through like that. Cool. Okay, so I've got the string in. Now I want to, and again, this is, you know, I'm just gonna take a piece of tape and just tape it down on the inside. So again, it's just, you know, I can't really show it because you kind of just have to feel it out. There we go. So yeah, again, I apologize because this is something you can't really show, but I've taped that down, I promise. So now I just have to, you don't want to cover the hole though when you tape it. So I'm going to stick the brad in, and again, can't show it, but I'm pushing that brad down. You can kind of help it out right there like that. So now I've got this string coming out of this brad. And now that I've done that, I can just, let's see, it kind of wants to go this way. Open up some space below that brad. And I like to do a little crisscross there. And I bring this around a few times. And that is my closure. So it kind of works, you know, those old-fashioned like inter-office mail envelopes. That's basically what I do here, and that keeps this closed. I might cut a little length off of this. This seems like too many times around. So let me make this a little shorter. So that was 20 inches, and then I just cut off like, oh, I don't know, another 4 inches or so. So that makes 16 now if you're keeping score at home. Actually, I'm going to cut another few inches off because I feel like 2 times around is enough. There you go. So that's the closure. It's a really easy closure. And then you just pull this open and your waterfall opens right up. So I think that this looks really classy. It also, on one page, in a pretty simple and easy way, gives us room, you know, for, what is it, 11 photos? 11 pretty large photos, too. So, yeah, that's the page. You know, I'll be embellishing things later, although I don't think I'm going to embellish this album too much because it's pretty masculine. You don't want to go over the top. But that's my page 3, and I'll see you soon with page 5. Have a good one.